I hit the garage floor hard, the metallic taste of blood flooding my mouth, and he laughed. "You think you're tough." Then his laughter died, because the person holding up the phone recording wasn't me, wasn't a neighbor. It was my sister's fiancé, the assistant district attorney, who'd been setting this trap for 3 weeks. My name is Harper Lane, and I've spent 13 years learning how to count backwards from 5 to stay alive. The dining room smelled like pot roast and lies that Sunday evening. Mom's good china gleamed under the pendant light, reflecting Mason's practiced smile as he carved the meat with surgical precision. My sister Sloane sat beside Nathan, her engagement ring catching the light every time she reached for her water glass. Everything looked perfect, the kind of scene you'd see in a Minneapolis suburbs holiday card. "So Harper," Mason said, not looking up from his carving, "still playing soldier on the weekends while pushing papers at that trucking company." I kept my hand steady on my napkin. "Ridgeline Freight. I coordinate night dispatch for interstate routes. And yes, I'm still serving with the National Guard." Dispatch. He let the word hang like smoke. Sitting in a chair, telling real drivers where to go, almost like being in charge of something important. Mom's fingers tightened on her wine glass. "Mason, please. It's a good job." "Of course it is, Linda." His voice stayed honey smooth. Captain of the fire station warm. "I'm just saying. Some people are built for real action, and some people, well, they're better suited for watching from the sidelines." Under the table, I felt it coming before it hit the steel toe of his boot connecting with my shin bone, precise and brutal. The pain shot up my leg like electricity. My breath caught, but I kept my face neutral while he maintained that civic hero smile for everyone else at the table. Nathan glanced between us, his prosecutor's instincts picking up something in the air. "Harper served 2 tours overseas. That's hardly the sidelines." "Ancient history," Mason said, finally looking at me. His eyes were flat, shark dead. "Some people peak early and never quite recover. Isn't that right, Harper?" The old injury in my shoulder, the one he'd accidentally wrenched 3 months ago, throbbed in response. I stood, feeling wetness seeping through my pants where his boot had broken skin. "Excuse me, I need some air." I walked through the kitchen, past Mom's pristine countertops and her collection of recipe books about keeping families together, and pushed through the door to the garage. The space smelled like motor oil and gasoline, tools hanging in perfect rows on the pegboard Mason's domain, where everything had its place and stayed there. I pulled up my pant leg. Blood was already soaking through the fabric, a dark bloom spreading from where the steel toe had connected. My hands shook as I pressed my palm against it, counting backward. 5, 4, 3. The door clicked shut behind me. "You think you're tough?" Mason's voice was different now, no honeycoating, no performance. This was the real him, the one Mom pretended didn't exist and the neighbors never saw. He moved toward me with the confidence of someone who'd done this dance 100 times before. "Walking out on a family dinner, disrespecting me in my own house." His hand came down heavy on my shoulder, fingers finding the old injury with practiced ease. "Someone needs to remind you of your place." 2, 1. His fist connected with my stomach, driving the air from my lungs. I doubled over, gasping, and his knee came up to meet my face. The world exploded in stars and the copper taste of blood. "You think you're tough," he repeated, and I heard that laugh, the one that would haunt me in the moments before everything changed. The first time Mason Clark entered our lives. I was 14 and still believed in heroes. He'd pulled up to our house in his captain's truck, uniform crisp, responding to Mom's panicked call about a kitchen fire. The way he'd taken charge, calm and authoritative, made Mom's hands stop shaking. 6 months later, he moved in. A year after that, they married in the backyard while his firefighter buddies formed an arch with their axes. The transformation was gradual, like watching ice form on a lake. First came the rules about respect, how I sat, how I spoke, how I looked at him. Then the corrections when I failed to meet his standards. A shove here, a twisted arm there, always followed by his explanation of how I'd forced his hand. "Discipline builds character," he'd say, adjusting his captain's collar in the mirror. "Your mother's too soft on you girls." When I was 17, he dislocated my shoulder. I'd come home 10 minutes past curfew from a study group. He called it a teaching moment, then drove me to the ER himself, charming the nurses with a story about my clumsiness during a family basketball game. They cooed over what a devoted stepfather he was, taking time from his heroic duties to care for his accident-prone stepdaughter. I tried to tell the truth once. 18 years old, bruises flowering across my ribs like purple roses. The responding officers knew Mason from the annual First Responders barbecue. They took one look at him, decorated captain, pillar of the community, and another at me, teenager with a newly minted tattoo and combat boots. "Harper's going through a rough patch," Mason explained, voice heavy with paternal concern. "Lost her father young, acting out. I found her drunk, fell down the stairs. We're getting her help." The officers nodded sympathetically. One clapped Mason on the shoulder. "Good on you for stepping up, Cap." After that, I learned the ecosystem of silence. Mom started baking more cookies, cakes, pies, as if sugar could sweeten the bitter truth she swallowed daily. "He's under so much stress," she'd whisper, dabbing concealer over my bruises. "He saves lives, Harper. He's a good man who sometimes struggles." The violence evolved with my resistance, chokeholds that left no marks, pressure points that screamed agony but showed nothing. He studied anatomy the way other men studied football plays. Even my military training became ammunition for him. Every self-defense move I learned, he learned to counter. "You think the guard makes you tough?" he'd say, fingers digging into nerve clusters I didn't know existed. "I've been handling real emergencies while you play weekend warrior." By 25, I'd perfected the countdown. 5, breathe in. 4, find a focal point. 3, prepare for impact. 2, protect vital organs. 1, survive. I stayed for Mom. For Sloane, who'd somehow escaped his focus by being naturally compliant, pretty, profitable in her PR job. She floated above our family's dark undertow, planning charity events while I counted bruises like rosary beads. The invitation arrived last month, thick cardstock, gold embossing, Sloane and Nathan's engagement party, location Mom and Mason's house. My stomach turned as I read it, knowing what those manicured hedges and that perfect lawn hid. "Isn't it wonderful?" Mom had gushed, eyes bright with desperate hope. "A celebration, something happy for our family. Our family, as if we were a real family and not a careful performance held together by fear and fresh-baked bread." I thought about running, packing my pickup and driving until Minneapolis became a bad dream. But Sloane's voice on the phone stopped me. "Please come, Harper. It wouldn't be the same without you." So here I was, bleeding in Mason's garage, counting backward while the man who'd terrorized me for 13 years reminded me exactly where I stood in his ecosystem. The hero, the good man, the decorated captain who everyone trusted. Sloane was getting married in this backyard, in the shadow of this house, in the place where I'd learned that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like heroes. 3 nights later, I sat in the dispatch center at Ridgeline Freight, watching 18-wheelers crawl across my monitors like beetles on a digital map. 2:47 a.m., the dead zone, when most of the world slept and only the night shift workers kept civilization running. My phone buzzed. A driver had jackknifed on I-94, blocking 2 lanes. No injuries, but he was panicking about liability, about his job, about everything unraveling because of one patch of black ice. I needed legal advice for him. My fingers hovered over Nathan's number. Calling my sister's fiancé at this hour would be strange, but prosecutors understood crisis calls. They lived in a world where 3 a.m. meant someone's life was imploding. "Harper." Nathan's voice was alert, not groggy. "Everything okay? Work situation, driver accident, He's spiraling about self-defense, liability, insurance, legal self-protection. The words tumbled wrong. Sorry. Long shift. Silence stretched between us. Then, self-defense is an interesting slip. Harper. I gave him the driver's details, and Nathan walked me through the protocol with professional precision. But when we should have hung up, neither of us did. Harper, he said carefully. When someone's been in a situation where they've had to defend themselves repeatedly, they develop tells, speech patterns, physical responses. You know what I've noticed about you. My throat went dry. What? You count. Silently, with your fingers against your leg. 5-1. Over and over. It's a coping mechanism. I've seen it in domestic violence survivors who testify. I couldn't breathe. I'm not pushing, Nathan continued, but if you ever need resources, legal protection, someone who understands the system I prosecute these cases, Harper, I know how hard it is to break free. After the call, I sat in my truck in the parking lot, engine running, heat blasting against the March cold. My hands shook as I reached for the dash cam I'd installed last month, paranoid habit from dealing with aggressive drivers. The memory card was nearly full. I scrolled back through the files, past highway footage, past parking lots, and then there, last week. I'd forgotten to turn it off when I'd parked at Mom's house. The angle was wrong, mostly showing the garage door, but the audio was clear. Mason's voice, muffled but distinct. You think you're tough. Think that uniform means something. Then sounds impact, gasping, his laugh, his only partial visual shadows and movement through the garage door windows, but you could see him looming over someone on the ground. Me. My phone rang. Nathan again. I forgot to mention, he said. My office has been investigating irregularities at Minneapolis Fire Station 19. Financial stuff. Your stepfather's name came up peripherally, nothing solid yet, but he's connected to some questionable procurement contracts. My heart hammered. Why are you telling me this? Because if someone were to provide evidence of other crimes, say documented assault, it would give us leverage to look deeper. Multiple witnesses to establish pattern of behavior. Physical evidence. Medical records. He paused. The kind of case that strips away someone's hero status permanently. I can't, Mom would. Your mother's been conditioned to protect him. But what about protecting you? What about Sloan? What happens when he runs out of you as a target? The question hung in the cold air. Through the windshield, I watched a semi pull into the lot, its headlights cutting through the darkness. If I were going to document something, I said slowly, hypothetically, what would I need? Everything. Photos of injuries with timestamps, medical records from every ER visit, even the ones he explained away. Audio recordings. Minnesota is a one-party consent state. Video if possible. His voice shifted, becoming gentler. Harper, I can help you build something airtight, but you'd have to be willing to use it. The engagement party, I heard myself say. He'll be performing for everyone. He always gets worse after he performs, needs to reassert control. Then we have 2 weeks to prepare. I thought about Sloane's wedding invitation, about Mom's desperate hope for normal, about 13 years of counting backward from 5. Nathan, I said, what if I told you I have partial footage from my dash cam? I'd say that's a first crack in his armor. And I'd ask what you want to do next. For the first time in 13 years, I didn't count backward. I counted forward. 1, gather evidence. 2, build the case. 3, set the trap. 4, let him hang himself. 5, freedom. I want to bury him, I said. Legally, completely, in front of everyone who thinks he's a hero. Nathan's response was immediate. Then let's get to work. The urgent care clinic smelled like disinfectant and broken promises. I'd been here before, different excuses, same injuries, but this time I asked for copies of everything. I need my complete medical history, I told the receptionist. All visits, all x-rays, everything from the last 10 years. Dr. Patel recognized me. She always worked Tuesday nights, had treated me 4 times now. Her eyes lingered on the fresh bruising along my jaw, the way I held my ribs when I breathed. "Harper," she said quietly, pulling the curtain closed behind her. Do you need me to document these injuries in a particular way?" "Photographs, detailed notes, specific language about pattern and force." I met her eyes. "And I need you to note that these are inconsistent with falling downstairs." She nodded, understanding flooding her face. "I'll be thorough. And Harper, I'm glad you're ready." While she worked, Nathan texted me instructions. Password for emergency phone, Freebird. Keep it hidden but accessible. Record everything, even casual threats. The next morning, I met Nathan at a coffee shop in St. Paul, far from Mason's territory. He slid a small device across the table, no bigger than a button. Voice-activated recorder, magnetic backing. Plant it somewhere he feels safe enough to be himself. He pulled out his tablet, showing me a legal document. "This is a petition for an order of protection. We'll file it the moment we have him on recording. It's already filled out, just needs your signature." "What about Mom?" "Your mother's not ready to leave, but when she sees him in handcuffs, when she can't deny it anymore, that might change." He leaned forward. "Harper, we need another angle. Someone who's witnessed things." That afternoon, I knocked on Marisol Alvarez's door. She'd lived next door for 8 years, her kitchen window directly facing our garage. "Mrs. Alvarez," I began, but she cut me off. "I've heard things. Mija." Her voice was soft, accented with 30 years of Mexico City bleeding through. "Through the walls, the garage. I've called 911 twice, but when they see his captain's truck..." She shrugged. "They assume I'm a confused old woman. Would you be willing to document what you've heard, times, dates, what specifically?" "I have a journal." She disappeared into her house, returning with a flower-covered notebook. Page after page of dated entries. 10:15 p.m., shouting from the Clark garage. Female crying. Captain's truck in driveway. I thought someday someone would ask. Nathan's investigation was moving faster than expected. He called that evening while I installed the recorder in Mason's garage, right behind his prized tool bench where he liked to corner me. "We got a warrant for surveillance on your stepfather's financial records," he said. "The fire department's internal affairs unit wants in. They've had suspicions about him skimming from charity drives, but no proof. If we can get him on assault, they can search his office, his locker, everything." "How many cops will be there?" "For the arrest, we'll have units standing by, but they need probable cause to enter. That's where the recording comes in. The second he puts hands on you, we move." "But Harper," his voice grew serious, "you can't provoke physical contact. He has to initiate. Otherwise, his lawyer could argue entrapment." I tested the recorder that night, my voice echoing in the empty garage. Testing. 1, 2, 3. The playback was crystal clear, even picking up the hum of the freezer in the corner. Sloan called while I was hiding the backup phone behind a paint can. "Harper, I'm worried about the party. Mason seems agitated about the guest list. Nathan invited some people from his office, and Mason keeps making comments about maintaining standards." "It'll be fine," I lied, knowing those people from Nathan's office included 2 internal affairs detectives. "Are you sure you know how he gets when he feels his authority is challenged?" Oh, I knew. That's what I was counting on. The plan was simple: survive until the party. Let Mason's ego do the rest. Nathan had coached me on exactly which buttons to push mentions of his station's budget cuts, questions about missing charity funds, innocent observations that would light his fuse in front of witnesses. "Remember," Nathan had said, "we need him angry enough to drop his mask, but you need to stay calm. Don't give him any excuse to claim you were the aggressor." I looked at the recorder, barely visible in the shadows, and thought about 13 years of counting backward. This time, I was counting forward to the end. Lake Nokomis sparkled like broken glass under the string lights Mom had spent 3 days hanging. The backyard looked like something from a magazine: white tablecloths, mason jars with wildflowers, a champagne fountain that caught the late afternoon sun. Neighbors mingled with firefighters. Nathan's prosecutor friends chatted with Sloane's PR colleagues. A perfect Minneapolis gathering where everyone pretended the mosquitoes weren't biting. Mason held court by the grill. Captain's polo shirt stretched across his chest, telling his favorite story about the warehouse fire of 2018. His crew hung on every word, even though they'd heard it 50 times. Mom orbited him like a satellite, refilling drinks, her smile bright and brittle as winter ice. Harper. Mason's voice boomed across the yard. "Come here. Tell everyone about your little trucking job." I walked over, feeling Nathan's eyes tracking me from where he stood with 2 men in casual clothes, internal affairs detectives, trying to blend in. "It's logistics coordination," I said evenly. "Interstate commerce. Keeping supply chains running?" Right. Mason clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder, fingers finding the tender spot from last week. "Our Harper here thinks she's some kind of expert because she tells truckers where to go, almost like being in command of something important. Isn't it?" His crew chuckled uncomfortably. Tommy Rodriguez, his lieutenant, shifted his weight. "Actually," I said, voice carrying, "it's interesting how much overlap there is with emergency services. Resource allocation, budget management. Speaking of budgets, heard Station 19 is facing cuts. Something about discrepancies in the charity fund." The laughter died. Mason's fingers tightened on my shoulder. "Where'd you hear that?" His voice stayed light, but I felt the tremor of rage underneath. "Oh, you know, drivers talk. They donate to the firefighters fund every year. Someone mentioned the books didn't quite add up last audit, but I'm sure that's just gossip." Tommy Rodriguez suddenly found his beer fascinating. 2 other firefighters exchanged glances. Mason's laugh was forced. Harper always did have an imagination. Too much time alone in that dispatch center, making up stories. "Like that story about the Riverside Avenue fire," I continued, innocent as poison. "The one where you got that commendation. Funny thing, my driver was there that night. Said he saw Lieutenant Rodriguez pull that family out, but somehow your name ended up on the report." The silence spread like spilled wine. Tommy's face went red. Nathan had found that detail in the Internal Affairs preliminary file one of many irregularities they couldn't prove without access to Mason's records. "Harper!" Mom's voice was high, frightened. "Why don't you help me with the cake? In a minute. Mom!" I turned to face Mason fully. "I'm just making conversation. Isn't that what family does?" Mason's mask was slipping. I could see it in the twitch of his jaw, the white knuckles as he gripped his beer bottle. "You know what your problem is." He stepped closer, forgetting our audience. "You never learned respect, never learned your place." "My place." I kept my voice steady, though my heart hammered. "You mean beneath you silent counting backward from 5 while you— Harper, garage, now." The words came out like a growl. "We need to discuss your attitude." "Mason, please." Mom's hand fluttered to his arm. "It's Sloane's party." He shrugged her off so hard she stumbled. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Nathan stepped forward, but I caught his eye not yet. "Is there a problem here?" "Captain Clark." One of the Internal Affairs detectives had materialized beside us, beer in hand, expression neutral. Mason's face cycled through emotions, rage, calculation, forced calm. "No problem, just a family discussion. Harper and I need to talk privately." "Privately," I repeated, loud enough for everyone to hear. "In the garage, like always." His face went dark as old blood. "Garage, now." I looked at Mom's terrified face, at Sloane gripping Nathan's arm, at the circle of witnesses who could no longer pretend they didn't see. Then I walked toward the garage, feeling Mason's fury radiating behind me like heat from a forge. The side door swung open. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal filled my lungs. I heard the door close, the click of the lock, and Mason's breathing, heavy with 13 years of unchecked rage. "You think you're tough." His voice was different now, no audience, no performance. This was the real Mason, the one who'd terrorized me since I was 14. Time someone reminded you exactly what you are. Behind his prized tool bench, the tiny recorder waited, ready to capture every word, every sound, every moment of what came next. I turned to face him and did something I'd never done before. I smiled. The garage door slammed shut like a coffin lid. Fluorescent light flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across Mason's face. The smell hit me gasoline, motor oil, WD-40, and underneath it all, the phantom scent of old blood and fear. "That smile won't last long," Mason said, rolling his shoulders. "You embarrassed me out there, in front of my crew, in front of everyone." "You mean I told the truth?" His fist connected with my stomach before I finished the sentence. Air exploded from my lungs. I doubled over, gasping, tasting bile. 13 years of practice kept me from crying out. The truth. He grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. "The truth is, you're nothing. A broken soldier playing pretend. A disappointment who couldn't even die properly in combat." His knee came up, catching my ribs. I felt something crack. Pain bloomed like fireworks. "You think you're tough." The words came with another blow. This one to my face. My vision starred. Blood filled my mouth. Copper and defeat. "Think that uniform means something, that your pathetic job means something." I collapsed to the concrete floor, the cold seeping through my clothes, through the tears blurring my vision. I saw it, a thin line of light from under the door, shadows moving outside, people listening, waiting. Mason stood over me, breathing hard. "Get up! We're not done!" I spat blood onto his garage floor, the red stark against gray concrete. "You're right. We're not done." He laughed at that sound I'd heard in nightmares for over a decade. "Still trying to act tough. Let me show you what tough really—" He stopped mid-sentence. Through my peripheral vision, I caught the blue light reflection in the chrome of his tool cabinet, the unmistakable glow of a phone screen. Mason turned slowly, his body going rigid. There, in the doorway by the house entrance, stood Nathan, his phone raised, recording light on, the prosecutor's badge visible on his belt. He'd been there the whole time, must have slipped in through the house entrance while Mason focused on me. "Don't stop on my account. Captain Clark," Nathan said, voice steady as stone. "Please, continue assaulting Harper. The audio's been recording for 8 minutes, but the video just started. I want to make sure the jury sees everything." Mason lunged for the phone. "You little I wouldn't." Nathan didn't flinch. "2 internal affairs detectives are right outside that door. They've heard everything through the recorder Harper planted. Oh, and Mrs. Alvarez next door. She's been live streaming the audio to her Facebook. 300 viewers and climbing." The blood drained from Mason's face. "You set me up. You fucking set me up." "No," I said from the floor, spitting more blood. "You set yourself up. 13 years ago when you threw your first punch." Mason spun back to me, rage and panic warring on his face. "You stupid bitch. You think this changes anything? I'm a decorated captain. You're nobody. They'll believe me. Like they believed you about the Riverside Avenue fire." Nathan stepped further into the garage. "Or about the missing charity funds, or about Harper's injuries all these years. Dr. Patel from Urgent Care sent her records an hour ago. Every visit, every injury, every lie you told." Mason's chest heaved. He looked between us, calculating, that tactical mind trying to find an exit strategy. "It's over. Mason." I pulled myself to my knees, ribs screaming, but I wanted to be looking up at him when I said this. "Everyone knows what you are now." "You think you're tough," he snarled one more time, raising his fist. The garage door exploded open, not the side door, the main overhead door, rising with a mechanical groan. Sunlight flooded in, backlighting the crowd that had gathered. Officers, detectives, Firefighters from Station 19, neighbors with their phones out, Mom, hands over her mouth, Sloane, tears streaming down her face, and everyone was filming. Mason's fist hung in the air, frozen in the perfect portrait of what he'd always been. Not a hero, not a captain, just a man who beat his stepdaughter in a garage while thinking no one would ever see. Got it all, Nathan said quietly. 8 minutes, 43 seconds of audio, 2 minutes, 16 seconds of video. Your confession, your assault, your true face. Still think she's not tough. Captain. The fist lowered slowly. Mason turned in a circle, seeing his world collapse in real time through a dozen phone screens, each one reflecting back the monster he'd hidden for so long. Mason lunged for Nathan's phone, but the internal affairs detectives were already moving. Detective Bryant, 6'3" and built like a linebacker, stepped between them while Detective Chin had her hand on her service weapon. Captain Clark, step back, Bryant commanded. This is my house, Mason roared. My property. They set me up entrapment. Entrapment requires law enforcement to induce you to commit a crime you wouldn't otherwise commit, Nathan said calmly, still recording. You've been beating Harper for 13 years. We just documented it. Mrs. Alvarez pushed through the crowd, her phone held high. I have everything, years of it. She turned to the gathering, her voice carrying across the yard. I've listened to this man hurt that girl since she was a teenager, called 911 twice. Nobody believed the old Mexican lady next door to the hero firefighter. The crowd rippled with murmurs. Tommy Rodriguez stepped forward, his lieutenant's badge catching the light. Mason, what the hell? The Riverside fire, that was my save. You took credit for my save. And the charity funds. Another firefighter added. Those discrepancies. Jesus Christ, Mason. Lies! Mason spat, but his voice cracked. He spun toward Mom. Linda, tell them how Harper makes things up, how she's unstable. Mom stood frozen, her perfect hostess smile finally shattered. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Mason, I heard the recording. Everyone heard? You knew? Sloane's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She stepped forward, mascara streaming down her face. Mom, you knew. All those accidents, all those bruises. You knew. Detective Bryant pulled out his handcuffs. Mason Clark, you're under arrest for assault in the 2nd degree, domestic violence, and intimidation of a witness. We'll be adding more charges pending full investigation. Mason tried to pull away. You can't. I'm a captain. I have commendations. I saved lives. You destroyed lives, I said, pulling myself up using Nathan's offered hand. Blood dripped from my mouth onto the garage floor. Starting with mine. Bryant read him his rights while Mason thrashed against the restraints. The body cam on Bryant's chest captured everything Mason's panic. The blood on my face. The crowd of witnesses with their phones still recording. Additional charges pending investigation into financial crimes at Station 19. Detective Chin announced loudly, ensuring everyone heard. We'll be executing search warrants on Captain Clark's office, locker, and vehicle within the hour. Mason's crew stood in stunned silence. These men who'd laughed at his stories, who'd called him a hero, now backed away like he was contaminated. Tommy Rodriguez looked sick. The audio, one of them whispered. Did you hear him? You couldn't even die properly in combat. He said that to a veteran. Nathan pulled up the recording on his phone, his prosecutor's voice carrying over the crowd. 8 minutes and 43 seconds of sustained assault, verbal abuse, and confession to 13 years of domestic violence. Every neighbor here is a witness. Every phone is evidence. You little bitch, Mason screamed at me, spit flying. You planned this. You and your Sloane stepped between us, her 5'4" frame trembling with rage. Touch my sister again, even look at her, and you won't make it to trial. Sloane, Nathan warned, but she wasn't done. 13 years, she said, voice rising. 13 years I lived in that house, pretending not to hear, pretending not to see. Because Mom said we had to keep the peace. Because you were the hero. She laughed, bitter as black coffee. You're not a hero. You're just a coward who beats women in garages. The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound like finality. Bryant guided Mason toward the patrol car while the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Someone started slow clapping misses. Alvarez. Others joined. Not celebration, but acknowledgement. Witness. Mom collapsed into a lawn chair, sobbing. The neighbors. What will everyone think? They'll think you finally stopped enabling a monster, Sloane snapped. They'll think Harper survived 13 years of hell while you baked cookies and made excuses. As Bryant pushed Mason's head down to guide him into the patrol car, Mason turned back one last time. His eyes found mine across the yard, no longer the dead shark stare of a predator, but the panicked whites of trapped prey. You think you're tough, I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. The patrol car door slammed shut, cutting off whatever response he might have had. Through the window, I watched him mouth words threats, probably, or please. But they were silent now, powerless, just like I'd been for 13 years. The sound of handcuffs engaging had never sounded so much like freedom. I pushed myself up from the garage floor using my own strength. No countdown needed. My ribs screamed. My jaw throbbed. Blood still leaked from my split lip, but I stood. Behind me, the concrete held 13 years of ghost impressions. All those times I'd fallen in this same spot. But this was the last time. The patrol car's taillights disappeared down the street, taking Mason to booking. The crowd in our backyard hadn't dispersed. They stood in clusters, processing what they'd witnessed. Some firefighters huddled together, probably calculating how many of Mason's stories were lies. The prosecutors from Nathan's office were already on their phones, likely coordinating with the DA about charges. Nathan held out his phone to show me the recording timer: 12 minutes, 17 seconds. Every second is admissible. His threats, the assault, the confession about doing this for years. It's all here. Detective Bryant approached, body cam still rolling. Ms. Lane, we need to get you to the hospital for documentation of injuries. Then we'll need a full statement. I know the drill, I said, then caught myself. For the first time in 13 years, I wouldn't be lying to medical staff. No more falling downstairs, walking into doors, clumsy accidents during family sports. Just the truth. Mom stood by the cake table, her perfect party dissolving around her. She looked smaller somehow, like Mason had been the framework holding her upright. Harper, Not now. I cut her off. Maybe not ever. You chose him every single time. You chose keeping the peace over keeping me safe. Sloane linked her arm through mine, careful of my injuries. I chose silence too, she whispered. I'm so sorry. You were a kid, I said. She was our mother. Mrs. Alvarez approached with her phone. 3,000 views already, mija. The comments people are sharing their own stories. You gave them permission to speak. I looked at the screen, seeing comment after comment roll past, survivors recognizing themselves in my story, people calling for justice, some sharing resources, hotline numbers, escape plans. My pain had become something else, a key for other locked doors. Nathan ended a call and turned to me. The DA wants to prosecute this personally. With the video evidence, witness testimony, and medical records, we're looking at 15 to 20 years. The financial crimes will add more. What about his pension? His reputation? Gone, all of it. By tomorrow, this video will be everywhere. No department will touch him. No charity will take his money. He'll be registered as a domestic abuser for life. Tommy Rodriguez approached hesitantly. Harper, I'm testifying. About the Riverside fire. About every lie he told. We all knew something was off, but we didn't want to see it. Nobody ever does, I said. That's how men like Mason survive. The EMTs arrived, and I let them guide me to the ambulance, as they checked my ribs, my jaw, the old wounds beneath the new ones. I watched our backyard empty. The string lights still twinkled over abandoned champagne flutes and overturned chairs. Mom's perfect party, destroyed by the truth she'd spent 13 years avoiding. Nathan climbed into the ambulance beside me. The recorder in the garage captured everything from the past 3 weeks, every threat he made when he thought no one was listening. "You know what he asked me," I said as the EMT started an IV. He kept asking if I thought I was tough. "You are tough," Nathan said. "No." I watched the familiar streets of Minneapolis roll past the ambulance windows, feeling something shift inside me like bones resetting. "I'm not tough. I was just surviving. There's a difference." And now, I thought about the patrol car, about Mason behind that mesh screen, heading to a cell instead of home, about the video spreading across social media like wildfire, about Mom's tears and Sloane's rage and Mrs. Alvarez's vindication, about 13 years of counting backward finally ending with me counting forward. Now I'm free. The EMT fitted an oxygen mask over my face as we pulled into the hospital. Through the plastic, I said the words I'd wanted to say for 13 years, the words that rang truer than any countdown. I'm not tough. I'm not weak. I'm not a victim or a survivor or any other label. I'm just Harper Lane, and I don't have to be afraid of him anymore. The body cam recorded that too, my final statement, my refusal to let Mason define me, even in defeat. Somewhere across town, he sat in booking, probably still asking himself how his perfect world collapsed, still probably thinking I'd planned some elaborate revenge. But he was wrong. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. The difference between the two was everything. The difference was freedom. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're hearing this. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your stories matter too, and this community is here to listen.